Hello everybody and welcome to this week's So Chatty, episode number 10. We call it Let's Measure Up because today we're going to talk all about measuring devices, primarily rulers and templates and things like that. And we have a couple of viewer questions to look at as well. And we're also going to talk about what's the best way to keep your ruler flat and what do you do if you get a nick in your ruler. So lots to talk about. So let's get right into it. So we're going to talk about this from the point of view of a quilter and from a garment maker's point of view on what we like about rulers and what we don't like. But let's start off right off the bat. Whether you get into sewing or you get into quilting, you're going to need rulers, obviously, because you got to measure and you need them for cutting as well. More so for a quilter on the cutting side of it than for garment makers, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So don't make the mistake that I did. I have literally, I have, counting templates and my rulers, I probably have about 40 or 50 different types of rulers. Do I use 40 or 50 types of rulers? Nope, I do not. And that also presents a problem with storage. If we remember, we'll come back to that as well. But I went ruler crazy when I first got into quilting because it seemed like every pattern I picked up said, oh, you should use this particular ruler. And of course, wanting to do it right, that's what I did. But do you need every ruler that a pattern says you need? No, you don't. There are some basics that you need. But before we talk about the basic rulers that I think any quilter should buy when they first get into quilting, let's turn our attention to garment sewing. And so, Walter, when you first got into garment sewing, did you go out and buy a lot of rulers?
Well, actually, I didn't really get into garment sewing first. What I ended up getting, I started trying to do a few quilts. So I ended up getting bigger rulers toward that I used more for quilts than for garment sewing. And then when I got into garment sewing, a lot of the rulers that I already had sort of were applicable to garment sewing, but there were a few specific ones I ended up buying for sewing, for garment sewing. Not so much, but the other ones were sort of multi-purpose I could still use for garment sewing. But the ones I use for garment sewing are not that extensive. Okay. Unless I haven't yet gotten to fancy garment sewing rulers. So.
Okay, well, we'll get into the specific ones that you like in a moment. But you said something very interesting. You talked about multi-purpose. And that's the thing. When you're buying rulers, when you first get into either type of sewing, look for a ruler that you can use multiple times in multiple ways. Reason is they are extremely expensive. You just can't go out and get yourself a yardstick or a meter stick or a wooden 12-inch ruler for these kind of sewing because they're not designed for any kind of sewing. You need the acrylic plastic ones for many reasons. One, you need them because you can see through them. And everybody's probably very much aware of that property of rulers. Of course, you can see through this one. Sort of. Well, actually, mine's a little cloudy, but that's because of something I'm going to talk about later. But okay, yours is a little clear.
Mine's a little clearer.
I'll explain why mine's cloudy later. But hold yours back up because yours looks cleaner than mine. You have to be able to see your fabric through the ruler so you can line up various division marks and things like that. And you also want a ruler that is relatively thick because if you're using a rotary cutter, especially when using a rotary cutter, a rotary cutter, you need something to rest that blade against. Otherwise, you're going to be all over the place with it. In fact, we've been watching the Great British Sewing Bee, and I'm astounded at the way that those people use rotary cutters. The quilt police would get them on that one. I'm surprised they haven't chopped off their fingers because they're doing everything you're not supposed to do with a rotary cutter. And a lot of them don't even use rotary cutters. They use scissors, which, well, if you're good with scissors, I suppose use what you know. But really, in this day and age, the rotary cutter you need, and if you're going to use a rotary cutter, you've got to use a ruler that has a thick edge on it. And so that's why just going out and buying a ruler you can get for $1.99.
And you would think this was a little cheap ruler, but these are not cheap.
No, and that's what I'm saying. You want some rulers. You want to think about rulers you're going to get into. because they run like that ruler.
I think this one, how much is this one?
I think it's well over $20.
I think it's around $20 for this one. And it's only like a little 12-inch ruler.
It's actually a 12.5-inch ruler, and it's only 1.5 inches wide. But yeah, and I have.
But I use this one the most.
I use mine the most too, out of it. I have spent up to over $100 for a ruler. Mind you, it was a specialty ruler, but nevertheless. So the money I have invested, when I look over in the corner, I have a ruler rack that holds all my rulers and my templates. There's got to be easily $500 plus in rulers over there right now, and it doesn't take much to add up with that. So, you know, do you need all those rulers? No, you don't. So let's talk about favorite ones. Well, I'll let you start. You said that one's your favorite. Show that
this
one
one is actually my favorite, and the reason for actually what I didn't bring down is a tape measure, but actually I use this one quite a lot because when I'm sewing seams, a lot of my seams are 3/8 of an inch, right? And all of this ruler is divided into eighths, so it's very easily to pick out 3/8 or 5/8. 3/8 or 5/8 are the two seams that I often do, and sometimes a quarter. And I'm getting confused. But anyway, a quarter, 3/8 is 3/8 is the most. 5/8 and 1/4 sometimes I use, and I don't always measure. I can guess. Most of the time when I'm sewing, I can guess the difference between a 1/4 inch seam and a 3/8 inch seam, because I don't have to be completely accurate when I'm sewing. But occasionally, like when I'm putting a pocket on or something like that, I really need to know accurately how wide that seam is. So I use this one because it's easy, it's handy. I can just put it down and figure out
and I have
the width.
The same one, and this is one I go to all the time. Again, almost for the same reasons Walter does. This one clearly marks on here a 1/4 inch line, and in quilting, you know, a 1/4 inch seam allowance is the basics for all quilting. It also has a very clear 1/2 inch line as well, and it is divided by 1/8 of an inch. I personally don't like doing anything in 1/8 of an inch, but there are some patterns where I have to cut things in 1/8 of an inch. So that brings up another thing about when you're looking at a ruler. Look at the markings on it. What markings are you going to use the most? Now, I know garment sewers use 3/8 and 5/8 a lot. If you're a quilter, you're going to use the 1/4 inches. I've already said a lot. But you want to be able to see those markings very clearly. And in this ruler's case, I can. And it's also got lines down along here, these white lines. So if I had to do like 1 1/4 inches, I can go right down that white line, line it up against the edge of my fabric, and know that I have a straight cut with it. So this is, I said, 12.5 by 1.5 inch. This is a ruler I would say that anybody, garment sewers or quilters, this is a must-have ruler. Again, the dollar store $1.99 one's not going to work for you because one, their markings may not be accurate on them. That's the other thing. Not all rulers are alike. If you buy a reputable ruler, this one comes from Creative Grids. They're a big name. OmniGrid is another big name in rulers as well. You can be pretty much assured that their markings are accurate. If you buy a ruler at the dollar store, no, not necessarily.
And you have to be careful sometimes because I should have brought my tape measure down, but I have a tape measure in my drawer upstairs, and they have normally they have a little metal cap at the end of the tape measure, right? And my metal cap fell off, and that actually added a little bit of distance to the first inch. So my tape measure that I have with the metal without the metal cap doesn't accurately measure the first inch.
So that just goes to prove not all measuring devices are equal. So you can't cheap out on rulers, okay? That's just the way it is. It's an investment. So, you know, you want to make sure that you're willing to put out that money for a decent ruler, and that's going to do more than one job. So this ruler, this size for both of us is a must-have. Now, that takes us to other rulers. And as I said, they come in all sizes. If you're a quilter, you know you got to do a lot of things in squares. It makes your life so much easier if you buy a square ruler. You may have to cut something. In this case, this will let me cut, well, anywhere from 1/4 of an inch up to 4.5 inch squares. And there's ways to line this up. You'll notice this has a diagonal line on it. That's very important when you're squaring up blocks for a quilt. I'm not going to explain how that works. That's for a video for another day. But that's really important. So a ruler...
And larger square rulers are also good when you're doing bags and stuff like that, so that you can make sure you've got an angle, proper angle.
Yeah. Now you notice this one does not have something like that. There are some rulers, though slightly bigger than this, that will have 45-degree angles, 60-degree angles, and 30-degree angles. Now those are for people that are getting into a more sophisticated design for cutting in quilting. I don't know. Do you use those kind of things in garment making?
That kind of thing?
Well, no, like angle lines.
I haven't yet had to make an angle line precisely in garment sewing. And not saying that you don't have to. It's just that it's not something I've hit or come across yet.
Now, I have a variety of these rulers. I have them as small as a 2-inch, but no, as a 1.5-inch square. I have a 2-inch square. I have a 3.5-inch square, 4.5-inch square, 5-inch square, 6-inch square, 6.5-inch square, 8.5-inch square, 12-inch square, 15-inch square, and a 20-inch square. And if you want to see what a 20-inch square looks like, that's this sucker.
I have one like that. I do use it once in a while.
And the other thing about...
But not for garment sewing.
This one is an Omni Grid, I believe. It's not a Creative Grids. And one thing I like about this ruler and why I bought it, there are special markings which you can't see on the video, but in here that show me if I have to put what are called inset triangles onto a quilt, that would be a quilt that they call being done on point. And so you have triangular pieces. Well, they're not easy to figure out mathematically if you're mathematically challenged like I am. This tells me exactly. I can go in here and I can find the measurement for it, and with the angles are already on this, so I can cut my triangles to put on a quilt very easily with this. So that's the other advantage of these types of rulers that you can't get in an ordinary ruler. They will have extra markings on them for specialty cutting jobs.
We were lucky. We got those on sale.
Yeah, because they would have been regularly well over $100.
Yeah.
And it was a clearance sale at Fabricland, and we got it for ridiculously cheap, which isn't always the case. Now, also on the squares I was talking about, this is a 9.5-inch square, and this is a 12.5-inch square. This makes your life easier when you have to cut out things that are certain square. Yes, you can figure them out with a straight ruler, but this is easier. If I need a 8-inch square or something like that, I grab one of these easy. I put it down, I square up two sides, rotate the fabric around, cut it the other way, bang, I've got the square. And I know that everything is perfectly straight. When you're using just a straight ruler to do that, you have to be extra careful that you get everything right.
Yeah,
now, I noticed you brought, what were you going to say before?
No, I'm just saying I don't just do garment sewing. I also do bags and stuff like that. So some of these rulers that you're showing here are ones that I would use when I'm doing a bag.
Yeah. So I noticed you brought down one of these.
Yeah, I have that. And really, I don't really use it that much in fabric sewing, but when I have my big piece of cloth that I have for cutting out my pattern pieces, I usually like to cut the ends off using one of those.
Yeah. Now this is a 24.5-inch by 8.5, I believe. And this is probably my second most go-to ruler. Actually, it's my third go-to ruler. My second one I'll show you in a moment. But you want a long ruler, because with the fabric in quilting is usually anywhere from 42 to 44 inches. You don't have a ruler, nor do you probably have a spot to cut where you can put out the full length of fabric or the full width of the fabric to that. In other words, if I want to fold it out from selvage to selvage, I would have to go out 44 inches. Well, I can't do that on my cutting table. So that means I have to fold my fabric in half and measure it from there. So then I'm working with a 22 inch with the fabric.
However, in garment sewing, I often have a 58 or 60 inch width fabric.
And how do you handle that?
I have to fold it more than once.
Well, more than once. And actually, I sometimes have to fold more than once too if I use one of my other rulers that I haven't talked about yet. But a long ruler is good to have with it. Now, can you get them longer than 24.5 inches? I don't think you can. I could be wrong. I have never seen one. But then again, you run into the problem. In my case, that would be of no use for me because I don't have a table big enough to cut on that could handle a ruler much longer than 24.5 inches. That's pretty much my limit. Not only that, you can't reach that far when you're cutting. Even at this rate, and we're going to talk about how these can slip and how to avoid that in a bit as well. But the longer the ruler, the more chance of it slipping. And that can cause you, well, one, you'll cut a crooked piece of fabric. Two, you could cut your hand. And we'll talk again, as I said, more about that. But I love this ruler. This one is a Creative Grids ruler. It has, now I was talking about diagonal lines. I don't know if you can see them. There they are here. But those are important when you want to do like mitered corners on something, or you need a 45-degree angle, or you're trying to cut triangles, as I said before, or you're trying to cut diamonds or anything like that. So that's good. Those are good things to have on it. The markings on Creative Grid rulers too, and I like Creative Grid rulers because they're very clear. You can see the markings on it. You can see everything's marked out with these dots. The whole bit, and it does go into 1/8 of an inch increments, which is good too. So
I like the OmniGrid ones too, but I like these ones. They're a little bit, I find they're a little bit clearer to figure out your actual
because the OmniGrids, this is an OmniGrid, and you can see it's in yellow. Well, on certain fabric, it is sometimes difficult to see your markings with it. It has lots of markings on it. It's, you know, there's lots there. It's a good ruler, well made. So really, the reason I have both Creative Grids and OmniGrid, because it depends at the time of what I want it, like what I needed it for. So that's why I have both.
The Creative Grids also has, on this one, well, and then on that one, they have rough areas on the back that grip your fabric.
Okay, you're jumping ahead.
Okay, so
we'll come to that in a moment.
Well, all right.
Okay, so what other rulers do you have over there?
Okay, another one I tend to use a lot is this simple little ruler here.
And you've seen those. Those have been around for 100 years.
And I really only started really using it when I'm doing garment sewing. And it's more for me to figure out my width of my hems. And that when I'm doing a 3/8 inch. The other thing I use it for is a lot of times when I'm doing a shirt, I have to figure out the middle of the button band, right? And sometimes it doesn't always work in inches to find out the middle. So this one also has millimeters on it, and it's sometimes easier for me to figure out where the middle is using the millimeters. So I use that a lot for distance between things, to find the middle of a section or whatever, or to find, to accurately figure out that I've got the hem the right size.
Yep.
And it has a little slider on it so that you can slide it up to where your hem is, and you can just line it up against the side of your fabric and make sure your hem's the right size.
But if you're a quilter, I have one too. And I don't use it that often, but sometimes I need to check my seam allowance. It's also a great way, not all sewing machines, if you're switching sewing machines, not all sewing machines will sew the same 1/4 inch seam. You need to check it. If you're going back and forth between two machines, say for example, I'm working on a quilt here at home and I'm using my main machine for that, but I go off to a class to do something with that same quilt and I take my travel machine. I could be off by as much as just a 1/16 of an inch So there's ways you can adjust your sewing machine to get an accurate 1/4 inch seam, but you need to check it. This can help you check that, because I just use this to measure. I will do a line of stitching, a couple lines of stitching on the machine. I will take this and I will use the little slider that's on it and the end point and slide it up to where those 2 lines are on either side, and I can check and see, well, am I 1/4 inch or am I slightly under or slightly over? And then I can adjust my needle placement on my sewing machine. And in quilting, and those of you that quilt know this, if you're out even by 1/8 of an inch, it gets multiplied on each piece that you do. So your measurements are not going to come out, your finished product of your quilt is not going to come out right. And it could actually bring you a lot of anguish. So these are traditionally more for garment makers, but quilters can use them too. They are handy to have. Another kind of tape or measuring tool that everybody should have, and they come in various types, is a tape measure.
Yeah, and they're often in imperial on one side
and metric on the other
side.
And now everybody has seen these. You can get them everywhere. But again, what we just said earlier, Walter talked about his and taking the end off and how that altered the measurements. Well, you'll want to check these out. Now, how do you check to see if they are accurate? Well, take a measuring device you already have that you know for sure is accurate and hold this up against it. So for example, on this little ruler, I know this ruler is accurate. And I want to check, say, 1 inch in comparison. So I pull this out to 1 inch and I'll put the 0 line. Okay, hang on to it. Where's my inch mark? I will put the 0 line on the tape measure on top of this. I will pull it down and I will look to see where the 1 is, and the 1 is bang on, right where it's supposed to be on this ruler. So I know that this is accurate. However, again, this is one by a reputable company, Quilter. Quilter makes a lot of sewing supplies. Yes, they cost more than going to buying one at the dollar store. And you might get one at the dollar store that'll be fine, but you'll have to check it. Just don't take for granted that, as I said earlier, that they are actually all marked off accurately. It makes a difference when you're cutting things. So what else have you got?
I have this little thing that I got on a package that's a 2.5 inch square ruler, right? And you would think that that wouldn't be too much, that somebody wouldn't need that. But sometimes when I'm doing a bag and I want a 2 inch corner out of it, or a 2.5 inch corner, this is actually really handy to cut the corner out with.
Yeah, well, because you could square things up easier. But this is neat. I didn't know it's got this little thing here.
Yeah.
So that marks the what? The 1/2 inch?
That's the 2 inch and the 1/2 inch, yeah.
The 1/2 inch and the color. That's really nice. Now there is some stuff you can get. It's a tape. That's a repositionable tape that you can put down on a ruler. For example, if I was cutting, well, I don't like cutting 1/8 of an inch, but if I need to cut 1/8 of an inch, say I needed something that had to be 5 1/8, well, finding 5 1/8 on this ruler is a little confusing. Yeah, it's there, it's clearly marked, I can figure it out. But when I have to cut a lot of strips, say that width, it's so easy to move off of that and go to like 1/8 bigger or smaller. So there is a tape. Now you can do the same thing with masking tape, but there's these other tapes you can get that are in neon colors. They're repositionable, and what you do is you put a line of that tape down where that line is, and when you lay it down, you know exactly. You can see it, it pops out for you. If you use masking tape, which you can use, or painter's tape, you may get a sticky residue on your ruler. This other stuff is actually designed not to leave any kind of residue. So that's another thing you can do. I have seen people use a color Sharpie on these rulers and mark it off, and you can get Sharpie off of these rulers. Just a little alcohol will dissolve the Sharpie off it. However, it may also start, depending on your ruler make, may also dissolve some of your lines if you use that on a regular basis. Not only that, but if you get any Sharpie on the edges of this, it may come off on your fabric. So you got to be careful with that. So tape's the better way to go. And you've got something else there that you want to show.
I have some interesting rulers here.
Yep.
I bought these. They're when I'm doing a hem, a lot of times I have to turn up the first 3/8 of an inch. and iron it. And these are ironable rulers.
In other words, they're heat resistant.
They're
they won't
heat resistant. They won't melt. You can iron on them. And so the only thing that's weird about these rulers is I bought them from Amazon, is they don't have inches. It's all metric. So, but it just so happens that these are all divided into centimeter squares, and 3/8 of an inch and 1 centimeter is the same size.
Ooh, good
so, I just take the first centimeter up there, and I can iron my hem up 3/8 of an inch, and I know I can get an accurate 3/8 of an inch hem. And even if I'm doing it on a curve at the top, I can do that as well. And if I need a 5/8 inch hem, the red line or the cross is where the 5/8 inch mark is. So I can figure that out fairly easily if I need to do a 5/8 inch hem.
Now, I could have used that ruler this afternoon because I'm working on a bag and I need it to fold up some ends of a strip of fabric for 1/4 inch. And what I did was I marked them with a pencil and did it. But then I had to fold it over and had to keep checking, see if I was on the line. Now, it wasn't that crucial if it wasn't particularly like bang on, but I did have, and I couldn't find it because I think I gave it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a metal one that he gave me too. Actually, I've never used it.
Yeah, well, I never have used it either. I could have used it today, but I don't know where it was, and I figured you'd never find it. So, but basically the same principle that like these, you fold the fabric over on that line, press it, and you've got your perfectly straight whatever size seam. Only problem with the metal one is it conducts heat. Mm-hmm. So if you put your iron on it for too long and you go to touch it, you will burn yourself.
Yeah, these are very nice. I'm not sure what they're made of. But they're heat resistant. It says on it a hot ironing ruler, and they work excellent and they don't conduct heat. So you can just put your hand on it and press.
Yeah.
And you can use steam and everything, and they're great.
Now I just thought I have one that's made out of a special paper. Yeah, it's hanging up over on the far side. It cost me $30. I can see that on the price tag on it underneath the bobbins. I've never used it, but I just remembered now that I had it. Yeah, of course, then I've already done it. So, but yeah, you can get a ruler for almost any occasion. Now, that's rulers. So,
that's pretty much my rulers that I use.
Yeah, garment sewers use less rulers than that, but with quilters, we have specialty rulers. Mm-hmm. Now, do you need a specialty ruler to do things? No, but you will get patterns all the time, and they're put out by a company and they're pushing one of their type of rulers. One of those companies that's famous for it, and they do make a good ruler, a good product, is called Studio 180. They're Deb Tucker rulers, and she has rulers designed for almost every application you can think of. This is one. It's called the Wing Clipper 2. And the one thing about these rulers, and I don't really use them, but I bought them because the project that I wanted to do said you should use this one. And I figured, well, why not use what they're writing the instructions for rather than try to figure out a different way to do it to make sure it was accurate. But then I've used it for that project and I've never did that project again. So I have this ruler. But with the Deb Tucker 180 design rulers, she puts a little idea package together with them. Gives you instructions on various ways and various projects you can use these rulers with. Plus, she has a YouTube channel and she goes over all of these as well for you. So they are expensive. I mean, this little wing clipper one here, which is meant for making flying geese, I think was about $30. They're not cheap rulers, but you will come across that all the time in a pattern. They'll say, yes, we recommend that you use such and such a ruler. And then what they often do is, from there on, their instructions are all around that ruler. So if you're new to quilting and you don't know the other methods to make, say, like flying geese, then, you may end up having to buy this. Yes, it is a method for selling more product, but if you see one that says it's got Deb Tucker on it, it is a good investment in that. But I said this one does flying geese. That's a flying goose right there. If those of you quilters know what I'm talking about. I have this by Cozy Quilt Designs. You can do flying geese and you can do half square triangles doing something called a tube, where it's two pieces of fabric sewn together back to back. And one of these kind of rulers makes it really easy for cutting them accurately. Yes, there are many ways to make half square triangles too. I have various rulers that do the same thing. But the one that I found for flying geese that works the best for me is this one. It's called the Ultimate Flying Geese tool. It is by Creative Grids, and it is excellent because it gives you the measurements for squares of fabric that you have to sew together and then shows you how to line it up to cut them accurately. I love this ruler. This one was a good investment. It was probably, I think it was about a $40 ruler, but when I make flying geese, this is the first ruler I go to. Now, Quilt in a Day makes flying geese and half square triangle rulers as well, and I have theirs too, and they're good. But this is what you learn over time, whatever works for you. But my recommendation is this one for flying geese because I love it. Then you get into very specialty rulers. I haven't even taken this out of the package yet. It's a Creative Grids one. I bought it. I ordered it to do a certain pattern that I haven't gotten to yet. It's a diamond shape. It's a 60-degree diamond. Yes, you can cut 60-degree diamonds or triangles using just a straight ruler with those lines that are drawn on it, the angle lines. But something like this makes your life a little easier because the way that the grid lines are designed on it and the methodology, and Creative Grids always comes with a little package with it that tells you exactly how to use the ruler. It just makes cutting so much easier and so much more accurate. And if you're using the right ruler for cutting job, you will waste less fabric if that's a concern. This is one part of a drunkard's path. This is a curve ruler, and there's another piece that fits in here. It's over my other stuff. But if you're going to do drunkard's path, you're going to need a drunkard's path ruler because that's a very specialized design. You might be able to cut your own templates and things like that for cutting them, but you want to know something? By the time you're done all of that, you might as well have bought one of these rulers. And then very specialized ones. This was a project that I did, and it had all these templates, and I think this package was about 60 bucks. Oh wait. No, sorry, 75. Price tag still on it. 75 bucks. Yes, it came with a lot of templates. Guess how many times I've used these?
Once.
Once. But I could not have done it any other way. I had to have this set of rulers to make this in here. So sometimes there is just no other way around it. So if you really want to do a project like this one, and I'll never make this project again because it was hell, you will have to invest in the specialty rulers. So I think that's all about, there's all kinds of other rulers, and I have a big pile of them. And so how do I store rulers? Well, they have holes in them usually. It's for hanging them up. This one has a hole right up here. And yes, if I had the space and I had a wall and I had, pegboard or something with things on, I would hang my rulers all up. But I don't have the space. So what I do is I have ruler racks. Ruler racks are very simple things. They're just a rail. They're just a piece of wood with grooves cut in it. Your rulers fit into them and you can put them off and they stand up in a corner or wherever. Well, I have 2 large ones and a bunch of smaller ones. Some I actually made myself with my 3D printer. That's a story for another day. And that's where all my rulers sit in a corner. Some people put a string through them and hang them up all onto one hook or something like that. I tried that method when I first got into rulers. Yeah, I couldn't find the ruler that I wanted. Now the ironic part of the whole thing is, as I said, there's only about 3 rulers that I really use. But I said how much rulers really cost. Walter, can you grab the big Stripology ruler there, please? This was an investment, and I love it. I use this ruler all the time. In quilting, you have to cut strips of fabric, and this ruler cuts strips of fabric in whole numbers or in 1/2 inches. And basically all it does is you put it on top of your fabric, and there's slits in this. You find, say I want to cut a 5-inch strip, I put my rotary blade in here, zip it up, I've got my 5-inch strip. However, I have to double over my fabric because this only is 14 inches. And with the fabric is 42 to 44, folded in half, it's 20 to 22. So guess what I have to do? I have to fold it again. If I want to go full width of fabric. And you can do that. But this was well over $100 at the time. Actually, at the time that I bought this one, I think I was about $95, something like that before tax. But I use it all the time. And it does come in different sizes. I have a little smaller one that is only about 7 inches across. And it has 1/4 inch marks on it. And then I think there's a one that's maybe a little larger than this, and I think it's well about $150 or something like that. I think. I'm not sure. I always get them mixed up whether I've got the largest one or there's one bigger than this, but I think there is one bigger than this, but I don't own it. Of course, storage is a bit of a pain. That one does hang on a hook over on the far side. And just as an aside, you got to be careful with it because there's so many slits in it. It's a little bit weak, and if you get it, you know, off your table or something, you can crack it. Because how do I know? Because I have, but I fixed it. But I had to fix it with clear tape, kind of a thing. It still works, but pissed me off because that costs a lot of money, right? Okay, so that's about rulers, especially, and then of course templates, which I've already talked about. So keeping your ruler from moving. Okay. Walter already talked about that. Do you want to talk about what's on the back of your ruler? Why
well,
you like
there's this one, and this one is kind of on the edges. It's rough, and it'll sort of grip your fabric to keep it.
It's rough on one side.
It's rough on two sides.
It's rough on one side. That side.
Oh no, okay, okay. One side of the ruler, the other side's smooth. I have an edge here and an edge here that's rough. But on the bigger rulers, they have dots on them.
So you see here, see the dots? Those all have a very rough texture to them, and it helps grip the fabric so it doesn't slide out from under you. Because when you lay this down flat, and you see the size of this, right? And you've got your hand on it, well, down here is easy, closest to your body. But when you get moving out and you're extending your arm, and depending on the length of your arms, that's when you can have slippage. It can go this way, or it can just go slightly over, and then you get a wow in your fabric, and that's no good.
I'm not saying that these won't slip. They will slip.
They will slip.
But this encourages it not to slip.
Yeah. Whereas if there's nothing on it at all, it's just plastic on top of fabric, and it will slide around. Now, there is methods in holding your ruler, and this is not in the scope of this production today, but basically how to hold your hand, how to distribute the weight of your hand so you can cut evenly. But if you've got arthritis, or you don't have a lot of strength in your hand, or you have really tiny hands, that doesn't always help. And where your ruler slides the most is at the top part. So how do you get around it? Maybe not this one, a weight. Now, this is overkill because I don't have smaller weights. I'm going to get one. This is a 15-pounder. You don't need 15 pounds. If you can get one of those little hand dumbbells, you know, the ones they sell for people that have, you know, problems, they're about 5 pounds or 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds, something like that. And that's what I'm looking for at the moment because this one's a little bit overkill. You just put that on the end of the ruler. Now, where did I get this idea? Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics does it all the time. And I only tried it recently, and it works like a charm for that. It holds that end up at the other one so it doesn't go and slip out. Now, there are other things you can get. If you reach down into that drawer, just let me do that. This. I bought this when I first started sewing. I hardly ever use it. In fact, I never use it. It's a suction cup system. So basically what it does is it's a handle. So it allows the pressure that you're putting on it to be distributed more evenly across your ruler and keeps it steady. I never use it. Why don't I use it? It does work. It does work. I never use it because I forget that I have it, for one thing, and second of all, I can't be bothered reaching in the drawer and getting it out. And then if I change rulers all the time, I have to take it off. And yeah, by then I could have had my fabric cut. So yeah, I'm lazy. But there are many people that swear by these. They use them. They're not particularly cheap. This is called the Gypsy Gripper. I don't know who makes it. They actually have a website, thegypsyquilter.com. But I have seen them in quilt stores and things like that. I don't know how popular they are. They've been around for a long time, but that's another method for distributing weight. Now, the other thing you can use is you can actually buy the dots that I just showed you on the big ruler. It's all ruler template grips, ruler/template grips. So you can put these on your templates as well. All they are is a little piece of plastic, little sticky plastic. I don't know how well you can see that, if you see the outline. And these just peel off. You stick them to your ruler and they keep them, it gives them grip. You see, because they're made out of like a rubber, and they're reusable. You can peel them off and put them in other spots. You can decide where you want to put them on your ruler. I actually use these on quilting rulers for ruler work quilting, because some of those do not come with any kind of grip on them, and these work really well with that. And those are rulers you really don't want to slip when you're doing quilting. So those are available as well, and they're not terribly expensive. I think a package is no price on it. I think they're like $5 and you get like 40 in a 15 in a package. I want to say $4.99. I don't know, I can't remember. But I have found something that works even better than this. Grippy. This is a spray. It's by Odif. They make all kinds of different sprays. They make basting spray, things like that. And you just spray this on the back of your ruler or your template, let it sit for a minute to dry, and yep, it works like wonderful. I mean, it's great. Like, it works like a charm. That's the word. I knew there was a word in there. I couldn't think about it. So this is really good. It's not cheap. It depends on where you buy it. You can sometimes get it on Amazon. It probably runs about $25 for a can of it, but you won't go through it very quickly, because once you've sprayed on your ruler, it lasts. It will not mark your fabric or anything like that. There's no residue or anything like that, but it works really, really well. You can probably get it in your quilt stores too. Sometimes it's not easy to get. Oh, I lied. This only cost me $12.99, but I didn't get it from Amazon. I think I bought it at Ultimate Sewing, actually. Yeah, but it was only $12.99 for the can, so even better. But I have seen it on Amazon for a lot more than that, so you got to know your prices. But it works really, really well. And I don't know, I said it was Odif, and it's just called Grippy, G-R-I-P-P-Y. So another method that's more of a, what I call a ghetto method, a lot of people will talk about this, you can use sandpaper. You take a piece of sandpaper or cut little squares of sandpaper or little circles and you glue them, or you use double-sided tape and put them onto the back of your ruler. It does work, apparently, but what I would be afraid of is it's very abrasive. Now, maybe if you used a really fine grit, I don't know, it could actually mark or rough up your fabric.
Well, the other thing is it would block your view.
Yeah, the other thing is it blocks your view, because you'd
have to put it in the middle of the hole or something.
Yeah, because these ones that come on this, or those ones I showed you that you peel off and stick on, they're clear. You can see through them. Grippy is clear too, except, and I said I would tell you, remember my little ruler here? And Walter said, well, it's dirty. No, it's got grippy on it, and it does fog it up a little bit. That's the one disadvantage of it, but you don't put a whole lot on it. You don't have to put gallons on it. So, you know, a light spray, yes, it's going to fog it a little bit, but you can still see through it. It doesn't stop me from being able to use that. So those are methods for keeping your rulers, you know, intact and in place on your fabric. Why is that important besides cutting straight? It's a safety thing. If you're using a rotary cutter blade and your ruler slips, and it will, and if your fingers are too close, yeah, there's nothing worse than a rotary cut. And ask me how I know, because I've done it. Now, also something else that will happen. I told you these rulers are a little thicker than if buying a cheapo one from Walmart or from the dollar store, something like that. And that's in order to keep your rotary blade where it's supposed to go as a guide on them. Well, they are plastic. Okay, it's a heavy plastic, but they're plastic. And you can nick them. If you're going along and your ruler slips, for example, just slightly, the edge of your blade can go into the ruler and then you're screwed. Because guess what? You can't use that ruler anymore for an accurate cut. You might be able to use part of the ruler, but you can't fix it. You can't file it down because then you'll get a wow in it. Your ruler is toast if that happens to you. And I know because I have a ruler like that, but I still use the ruler, but I use the other edge of it. Makes it a little bit more awkward because I have to read the numbers upside down kind of a thing, but I can still use that. And it's a ruler I don't use all the time. But yep, it's very easy with a rotary cutter to gouge into these rulers. So you don't want to be zipping along. Like Jordan Fabrics, if you ever watch her on there, she just goes zit, zit, zit. Well, she's a professional. She does it all the time, kind of a thing. You don't have to cut that fast. Slow it down for safety reasons and for an accurate cut. It's not a race. So, but those are just some safety tips as well. But as I said, if you nick your ruler, that's it. Kiss your ruler goodbye. And they're kind of expensive to kiss goodbye. So, anything else you want to say about rulers or measuring devices?
Not really.
No, I think we've covered about everything that we know about them.
I mean, there's some specialty rulers that you can get for certain things for garment sewing. Something called a French curve or something. I think it's more for doing women's clothes. I don't do women's clothes. So,
do you wear women's clothes?
No.
Little frilly under things?
So, but there aren't, best of my knowledge, too many different garment style rulers that are available. They're just, it's more measuring your seams and stuff like that for rulers. Because when you're doing a garment, most of the time you're cutting your fabric from a specified pattern, which is sort of a template. Right? So, but you don't need a ruler for that usually. It's just measuring seams. If you're doing a made-to-measure garment, you need a tape measure to measure, the width of your chest and things like that. So that's what you use garment sewing.
No, there's a lot more rulers when you come to quilting because of the different patterns and things that you need to cut out. That's why there's so many available.
Like in garment sewing, you would have to use a tape measure a lot to measure the width of a person's chest or hips or whatever to make sure you're sewing the right size garment.
Yeah, which is not something you have to worry about in quilting. But anyways, so that I think sums up everything we know about rulers. There are techniques for using rulers, not in the scope of this presentation today, but just go on YouTube and they will show you all kinds of ways that you should be using your rulers correctly. If I was to start to explain that, I'm sure I would tell you the wrong thing because I probably don't use them correctly. The ruler police will get me if the rotary cutter doesn't first. But this, just some loose ends before we finish off here. Last week we were talking about irons and we talked about, water that goes in them for the steam feature. And I said that most of the modern irons tell you just to use tap water, not to use distilled water. And I don't really know why, and that's what I said. Well, one of our viewers, Lorraine, she gave me some explanation for that. She uses a Rowenta, which is one of my favorite irons, and she's had one Rowenta that she's had for years. She bought it in the 1990s, I think, and it's still running well to this day. But she says that she read the insert in the box says Rowenta iron should be used with tap water of up to 3 milliliters. MMOL she's got here. I thought that might have been a misprint.
Millimeters per, I don't know.
I don't know what that means. Anyways, total hardness is a measurement for water hardness. Calcium and dissolved metal salts can be removed from tap water with the Rowenta Fast Decalcifier, which is available from Rowenta dealers. But what that is saying is that there are minerals, there's added things to tap water that might build up. So that would say then you should use distilled water. But Rowenta says not. They say to use tap water. Distilled water should normally be mixed 1-to-1 with tap water. The use of pure distilled water creates difficulties with steam production and can cause water to escape from the sole plate, formation of drops. This was all written on her box for it. So then she says they go on to tell you exactly what other types of water not to use. So I'm still not clear exactly why you shouldn't use distilled water, except they're saying that it interferes with steam production, which I don't know why that is. I mean, I thought steam is produced by heating water, right? So I'm still not clear why this is, but they did say not to use distilled water, and they're a reputable brand. Now maybe they're trying to sell their little device or something. And I know on my big Rowenta, I have a calcium thing that traps calcium in the tap water, and you clean it off every now and then. I talked about that on that video.
I remember years ago when I was visiting a friend. His mother was ironing, and that was when I was a little kid. And she would have a little bottle, and she'd pour water into the little bottle, shake it up, and then put it into the iron, and as if it was supposedly demineralizing it or something. I don't know what that is.
I don't know.
That almost sounds like this decalcifier thing. That
yeah, maybe it is.
about.
Well, they say if you do use demineralized water, they say mix it with tap water.
I know
I don't
years
know.
ago
It's very confusing.
I think my sister or something kept saying that you had to use distilled water for our iron.
Well, that's what I
yeah.
always heard was that. But every iron that I've owned now, all of them say just use tap water. They actually say don't use distilled water. So the mystery's still there, but thank you, Lorraine, because this was interesting, at least about the Rowenta iron.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've had it since 1993 and it's still working. Whoa, hope they're still making them that good. Another person wanted me to do a tutorial on how to make a Teflon lined iron bag. Now I said that I had made this little pouch to carry my Rowenta in to classes, and because it takes it a while to cool down and I'm packing up to get out at the end of a class, I can't sit around and wait for the iron to cool right down before I pack it away. So I made this little pouch and I lined it with a Teflon sheet. Now I'm not going to do a tutorial about how to make a pouch, because why should I, when you can go onto YouTube and there's hundreds, literally hundreds of, how to make a simple little pouch. But what I did was I put between the lining and the outside of the bag, I put in a sheet of Teflon. Well, I happen to have Teflon sheet because I'm a crafter. This one, don't mind, this has paint on it because I use it for crafting. But this is a Teflon sheet. Various crafting companies, Ranger is one of the major ones, they make these Teflon sheets. They're non-stick, they're heat resistant, and they're meant for crafters. I had an extra one of these. I just took it, I cut it the same size as my lining, and just like you would use interfacing, I just put it between the two layers, my lining and my front fabric, my outside fabric, and then just sewed the bag as you normally would. And so this bag has one of these sheets, and they're very thin, in between there. And your bag will get warm, but it won't burn, and it won't set other things on fire if your iron's a little bit hot. So that's all that I did with that. So yeah, and there's other stuff you can get. There's a product called Insulbrite, which looks like batting with tinfoil on it. Now it's meant though to use in hot plates or hot mats and things like that. You could use that as well. The only problem with that, and even to the extent with this, is if you put your iron in and it's really hot and you're using Insulbrite, you'll probably go home and still have a warm iron in there because it's an insulator.
You can buy silicone sheets and stuff like that too. You might be able to use something.
You could probably use a silicone sheet too, but that's all I did. And it was just to protect the other stuff that was in my sewing bag when I was packing things up. So that's how I made it. That's all there is to it. Okay, so that takes us to the end of things. So next week, well, if you have suggestions, please send them to us. Somebody did send the suggestion about rulers, and that's why we did it. Next week, though, if we don't get us any other suggestions, I guess we're going to look at some of our favorite things. We're not going to sing the song. We're not going to run out in a hill and twirl and make clothes out of curtains. We're not doing any of that, but we'll talk about what we can't live without. In our drawers of things. And you know, there are many, many things we have bought since we started sewing, and some of them got used once and never again, but there are other things we go to all the time. So we're going to talk about our favorite things next week, but feel free to send us suggestions. Okay, any parting comments, Walter? Anything you want to say?
No.
Yes.
I'm all measured out.
Shirts by Walter. Okay, but you've seen these ones probably before. Walter just learned how to do a matching pocket. This one doesn't, but you can't tell because the fabric's so busy. But he's just figured that one out, how to do that. So watch for those creations in the future. Okay, everybody, have a good whatever's left of the week or whatever time you're watching this. Have a good one. Hope everybody's healthy. And we'll see you for the next So Chatty in a week's time. Bye for now. Say goodbye, Walter.